Hello, Attack on Titan is an amazing show, and if you didn't know that at this point, I would like to know what kind of rock you're living under. Hi, my name is Evie, and I like to think way too much about fictional realities to distract myself from the real one. And I'm about to make it your problem. Attack on Titan is fucking awesome. I'm sure you've heard people talk about it before, and for good reason. Literally, it's one of those things where every aspect deserves praise. Story, effortlessly engaging. Characters, lovably complex. Action, epic. Music. You want suspense, you want plot twists, you want amazing animation? Well, then you've come to the right place. You want romance? Maybe go somewhere else if you're looking for romance. But everything that I've just mentioned has already been praised, but something that I don't hear enough people praising Attack on Titan for is doing all of this without using the crutch of over-sexualizing their female characters every 5 minutes. Instead, it actually keeps the audience engaged with an interesting story. However, Attack on Titan is genuinely better enjoyed spoiler-free in my opinion, so just in case you did actually crawl out from under a rock but you need a little bit more convincing to actually go watch the show, continue watching, but please leave whenever I give a spoiler warning. And then, once you've watched it and you're like in on it, you can come back and actually enjoy the humor. And if you have already watched it, how's therapy going? Good? Good. Anyway. One of the easiest ways to spot cheap fan service is unnecessary nudity. Now, there are some examples of nudity in Attack on Titan, but for the most part, it's just guys with their shirts off, unless you count the Titans. And I mean, technically it could be argued that the few scenes that it does happen in, it isn't technically necessary, but maybe I should rephrase my initial statement. One of the easiest ways to spot cheap fan service is unnecessary nudity, wherein the nudity is the point of the scene and isn't necessary to furthering the plot or enhancing the characters. That doesn't quite roll off the tongue the same way, but whatever. This isn't to say that I'm against something showing more skin than, what is allowed in the high school dress code, but what I am saying is it shouldn't feel forced. There's a difference between a character occasionally having more skin exposed than normal and somehow having their body exposed in every scene. Again, I'm not saying that it's necessarily a bad thing to have nudity in your story, it's just that anytime anything feels forced, especially whenever it's meant to be sexualized, for me it just kind of feels gross. It's kind of similar to like an ad placement in a movie. Sometimes ad placements are done well, and they're done in quite a lot of things that we see. However, if you're watching a movie and all of a sudden the momentum of the scene stops just to pan to a picture of a can with the logo facing out, you're gonna notice. I feel like it kind of cheapens the moment anytime you see something like this, because you know that that wasn't placed there in order to enhance the story or, further the plot. You know that it was probably put there by a boardroom of executives. And honestly, that's how I feel every time I see a scene where a woman's body is being objectified and sexualized by the creators. It feels like she's being reduced down to a can of soda with a logo facing out, rather than an actually important character to the story. Anyway, kind of like I mentioned before, basically all of the nudity in the show is just men, which is refreshing enough in itself, but also it's not more excessive than what is considered normal in most cultures. I live in the South. Anytime it is hotter than about 70 degrees and you walk outside, there's gonna be somebody with their shirt off. I don't know why. And yeah, people who are attracted to men might find these scenes with their shirts off more interesting than others. But it is never used to reduce a characters down to their bodies like is often done whenever women are used for fan service. I think that is the main subversion. Even though, on paper, this show appeals mostly to men, Isayama decided to not take the cheap route of enticing male viewers with these cute girls in minimal clothing. He decided to write an interesting story. And this is kind of a big deal, given that in a lot of anime, women are reduced down to just body pillow bait with maybe a couple of lines that just tell the male protagonist how cool they are. Honestly, because it's so normalized, even female viewers like myself have just come to expect it to a certain degree. And that means whenever you watch a show where it doesn't happen, it means that much more. And also, we have to acknowledge that this comes at a cost of reducing the story down to only a limited perspective of the male protagonists. And it's not as full, I think. You can tell whenever a creator actually takes the time to consider different perspectives to their story. And honestly, we should be setting the standard at a lot higher than it is. Anyway, that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this, because the industry standard basically said that you could write hollow, two-dimensional characters that just looked cute, and Isayama said, "No, I don't think I will." Really, one of the only things that I could find wrong in Attack on Titan's portrayal of women is that there just aren't enough of them. For every one female speaking line, there's about 2 male speaking lines. Which could technically be argued away because most of the main characters are people in the military, and even though it isn't the main focus of the story, there is some implied sexism, which could make it harder for women to enlist in the military in the first place. So fine. But I just really enjoy how Isayama writes female characters into his story, and I just want to see more of them. Also, the female characters that we do get are amazing. Okay, now I know having a strong female character in a story does not immediately make a story a feminist masterpiece. However, I'm a simple girl. Sometimes I just like women that kick ass. It's awesome. Now, that being said, I do love more nuanced stories about what it's like to be a woman, about overcoming misogyny and all that stuff. However, media does this funny thing to minorities where it basically reduces their stories down to their struggles and not actually give them nuanced representation. I'm not saying that stories about overcoming struggles of being a minority is a bad thing, and I'm not saying that we never need to hear those stories again. However, to get a more realistic view of what it's like, we need a wider range of representation, and sometimes that includes people that just kick ass. And that is one of the reasons why I love the female and non-binary representation in Attack on Titan. The characters don't have to fight just to get their voices heard, and they don't have to prove themselves stronger than everybody else twice as often as their male counterparts. They just are strong, and the people in that world respect that. I mean, honestly, the scouts don't give a fuck what's between your legs if you can kill titans. Unless it's nothing, because then you're probably a titan, and I would advise running really fast away from anybody who has black hair and gray eyes. Also, Attack on Titan shows women being strong in different ways. Some of them have natural intuition and resourcefulness, and some of them have emotional resilience and continue to grow throughout the show. At the same time, there are examples of women being exceptionally strong physically. Now, this is a mild spoiler warning, but I think it's talked about in the 3rd or 4th episode, so whatever. One of my favorite realistic examples is Annie's fighting style. She specifically talks about how she learned this fighting style to fight against people stronger than her, and it works. We see her beat Reiner in physical combat training, and he's 6'3" or something ridiculous like that. This acknowledges that a lot of fighting styles taught rely on brute strength, which puts a lot of women at a disadvantage. However, there are ways where you can still win a fight without being the biggest person in the room. We also see an example of women who are just born with an advantage through Mikasa. Mikasa has to fight and has to train to get where she is, but she also just has natural intuition with the ODM gear that they use to kill titans, and is pretty much one of the strongest people in the show. Both of these examples combined paint a pretty flattering picture for what women can do physically, saying that it's both possible for women to be born with natural advantages just like men, but also, even if you aren't, you can still train yourself to fight and win and be just as good as any other soldier. Okay, but speaking of kick-ass women, can we talk about the character and costume design? I am so grateful that the costume or uniform that the characters are in for the majority of the show is like gender neutral, because I swear to God, if I see another movie or TV show or just any franchise in general put their female characters in bikini armor, I am going to lose my mind. It is so refreshing to see all of the characters wear basically the exact same thing and all look pretty good in it, honestly, compared to, like, I don't know, shows where women are wearing extremely ridiculous outfits that you know would not function well in battle. Meanwhile, their male counterparts get to wear something that is at least kinda reasonable. Also, like, you know that most of them are just there for sexualization, because there is no reason to have your entire chest exposed in battle, ma'am. Ma'am, you have organs in there. Ma'am, please. Ma'am, please. Speaking of bodies, though, can we take a look at the character design? Because, oh my god. Now, there is kind of a limited range of the size and shape of the bodies, because again, we are following soldiers and most of them have to be pretty physically fit, so it kind of limits that. But what we do get is still pretty great. I don't know about you, but I don't see an ounce of same face syndrome in this bitch. You can tell everyone apart, basically almost just by their eyes and eyebrows. Everyone has a wide range of features, but it's still realistic enough where it fits into this style. Also, Isayama uses quite a bit of quote-unquote undesirable traits that you don't really see much in anime, like, you know, freckles, or I guess some people say that it's acne. That's cool too, and also like more prominent noses and like thin and really thick eyebrows, and it's just beautiful. And I think that adding these certain features that are normally deemed, you know, I don't know why do we not see more features like this in other anime? Like, I know a lot of other animes are more stylized than Attack on Titan, and I actually really enjoy the more realistic style that Attack on Titan does. Like, it's definitely still anime, but it's like the character designs are realistic enough that it kind of grounds the story. Honestly, that's one of my favorite things in Attack on Titan in general. We're going on a tangent here. Anyway, that's one of my favorite things in Attack on Titan in general, is just the fact that it's such a insane concept that seems completely impossible, but the characters themselves react in a way that seems like what normal humans would do in such an extraordinary situation. And I think that that is what grounds a story and really makes you care about it. Also, while I'm on a tangent, I'm going to go on a slightly different tangent. You know what I was talking about with, like, the body shape before? Again, I get it. They're supposed to be physically fit. I get it. I also think it's just really funny that, like, every person we see with their shirt off has abs. Including Armin. I love Armin. He is probably one of my favorite he's probably my favorite character. Let's be real. I love him to death. Him having that baby face and abs at the same time really caught me off guard. I'm gonna be real. Anyway. Wow, there's also LGBT representation in Attack on Titan without it feeling too tokeny or sexualized? Well, that's almost enough to make me forget how sad I am over season 4. Almost. Anyway, those who were paying attention probably noticed me mentioning non-binary representation earlier, and we get that in the lovable Titan lover, Hanji. Hanji is one of the best representations of a non-binary person I've seen in, like, anything, honestly. Oh, and by the way, even though certain translations and certain subtitle translations do refer to Hanji with she, her pronouns, I'm going to be referring to Hanji with they, them pronouns throughout this video, because Isayama specifically said that they were meant to be ambiguous and that they don't really care about gender. But I'm just going to use they, them. Just, yeah. Cool. Anyway, their gender isn't really questioned by those around them, and they are often regarded as a bit eccentric, but still respectable enough to be a trustworthy leader. They're also just incredibly intelligent and resourceful, as well as just being a lot of fun to watch. Their introduction, especially in season 1, is much needed levity to the situation. I haven't gotten to the spoiler part yet. Right, okay. Anyway, without spoiling too much, just a little bit, just a tiny bit of a spoiler, just a tiny bit. Anyway, we see them regard Titans with a sense of curiosity and wonder, which is really interesting because, you know, before that, we really only see people refer to them in either fear or just kind of not really caring. And their curiosity kind of pays off as the series goes on. But again, no spoilers. Also, whenever they're first introduced, the audience themselves doesn't really know anything about Titans, so their curiosity is kind of like a stand-in for the audiences, and their experiments and stuff kind of answer a lot of questions that I know I had. Basically, what I'm trying to say is they are a non-binary character, not a character that is just non-binary, if that makes sense. They contribute to the story and have a believable character progression as time goes on, and while their identity is important to who they are, it's only a part of them. They themselves are also integral to the plot of the story, which is kind of refreshing because a lot of times we see LGBT representation be slapped on like after the story is finished, and you can tell they just kind of stuck them on there and didn't really think it through. Kind of like what I was talking about with a bad ad placement before, the audience can tell whenever something wasn't actually thought through and it isn't put there to enhance the story. Hanji is a great example of having representation just because there are people that are non-binary, and there are people that are gender fluid, and they contribute to our world the same way anyone else would. While it isn't technically necessary for Hanji to be non-binary, they're a good example of just a queer person existing for the sake of existing. Again, it's kind of a broader spectrum of representation. Their story doesn't have to be about their gender identity for it to be important. People with certain identities just exist. And Hanji is a great example of a person who is non-binary just existing and also contributing a lot to their world. Also, speaking of queer, we can't forget how basically the only canon couple in the entire show is a lesbian couple that isn't sexualized. However, sorry, in order to get into why this relationship is so special, I am going to have to get into a little bit of specifics that will contain spoilers for the series. So, if you want to, go ahead, go watch the series up to like at least the end of season 3. I'm not going to spoil season 4 because I know there's still a lot of people that haven't watched it. But yeah, go ahead and watch at least to the end of season 3. Bring tissues and then come back. Cool? Great. Yeah, bye, please. I really recommend it. Okay? Are they gone? Is everybody gone? Cool. So, I'm the Armored Titan and he's the Colossal Titan. Anyway, time to talk about our favorite lesbian couple that, instead of appealing to the male gaze, gives it a middle finger. This disregard for the male gaze applies mostly to Krista's/Historia's character arc. She begins in the first season by basically being what people have called her waifu bait, which I understand. She doesn't really have that much depth. She only really has a couple of lines and scenes, and basically all of them she is taking care of other people. She has big eyes and a kind personality that seems to just get along with everybody. Even the men in the show seem to be taken up by her and call her an angel. And then guess what? Boom! It's revealed that was all a trauma response. Well, actually, I mean, her character progression was a lot slower than just boom, but still. Honestly, I would love to make an entire video on just Historia, but anyway, to summarize quickly, we get a little bit of a view into her past, realize that she is half royalty but had to hide her identity in order to appease her father and the church, and then with a little bit of skill, luck, and her ODM gear, she ends up killing her father in front of a crowd of people. And that proves her worthy to be queen. To be fair, her father did turn himself into a Titan monstrosity, and that made the moment feel a lot more celebratory and heroic than I just described it. Also, in Attack on Titan, if I had a nickel for every time a child had to kill their father because he was a Titan, I'd have 2 nickels. It's not a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right? Anyway, the main point of her character arc is learning to be more selfish and bold with who she is, and that she doesn't have to appease every single person in the room to be valid as a person and to have self-worth. She has to unlearn the habits that she was taught as a kid to lie and to just become what people want her to be in order to appease her father or her mother or the church. She has to figure out who she wants to be and live for herself. But she does this with the help of a very good friend. Her relationship with Ymir and the parallels of them both dealing with their trauma is honestly beautiful. Also, the fact that they were both keeping secrets and like they eventually became completely honest with each other, and that's whenever they decided to declare that they were like going to be loyal to each other forever, like, They basically went from like background characters that got a couple of lines and were just there to honestly one of my favorite things in the show, even if, like most things in the show, it did not have a happy ending. And I remember the first time I heard,
"To my dear Historia."
the thought crossed my mind, like, is this the bury your gays trope? And then I realized that this is Attack on Titan. It's more like bury your happiness along with basically all of your favorite characters trope. Yeah. Anyway. Like I said before, one of my favorite things is watching characters react to this impossible world in realistic ways. I think the first moment I realized that this show was something unique was in the second episode whenever the soldiers were like debating whether or not they should close the gate. Because should they let everyone in the city get through but maybe risk a couple of Titans coming in? Or should they, make sure that the gate gets closed now so that way no Titans will come in and prioritize the majority of lives that are inside the walls? And also, they're not having this debate in a vacuum. They're not just sitting at a table with some nice tea. They're in a high-stress situation, and their stress and fear is what's influencing their decision, because they're basically lowering the gates, partially, if not wholly, because they themselves are afraid, but they're using the excuse that they need to prioritize the lives inside the walls because there's more people there. And even though they're technically choosing their fear over their compassion for human lives of people that they probably know, you can't say that you wouldn't do the same thing in the situation and maybe give in to your fear or maybe just listen to the counter argument because it could possibly save more lives. Anyway, our good buddy Reiner hears of this philosophical discussion and decides to throw in his answer. And basically his answer is, and I quote, "Fuck your gate." And just like that entire moral conundrum didn't actually matter at all, because honestly, if they had let the gate up, it probably would have let more people escape, but they had no way of knowing what was about to happen. And this show is dripping with defining moments like this. These kind of moments make the world feel real, and even these side characters that you see for 2 seconds to maybe 10 scenes, you actually feel like they're real people. Also, the characters that you do go in depth with are amazing, and honestly, Attack on Titan has some of my favorite characters in anything in general, honestly. They're all morally gray and complex and have their own feelings and emotions. However, Season 1 is not the best example of this, especially with their female characters. 'Cause oh look, a female character! Okay. Oh look, a strong female okay. Oh look, this girl seems cool, I wonder... Okay. Oh hey, there's another strong female character that actually expresses... Oh. Bonus round that I forgot to mention. Wow, she seems so cool, and her motivation must be so nuanced. Oh. Okay. Now, to be fair, Mikasa does have more character in the first season than just liking Eren, but ever since I heard how much better she was in the manga, I can't stop thinking about how much they boiled her down. Also, Not really getting to know characters is kind of a problem just in general in season 1, and it happens to male characters too. Basically, only the main trio gets much depth with a few exceptions here and there. But even still, the only reason I'm criticizing season 1 like this is because we get to go so much more in depth with so many more characters later on in later seasons. Even side characters get enough of these moments where they feel at least a little bit like real people. Like, a couple of examples that come to mind is when Levi's squad reacts too harshly to Eren making a partial Titan, and so they apologize to him, and then to show their solidarity, they bite their hands, and then that mark is there during their last mission. Ooh, last mission, ouchie. Basically the entirety of Riko's character, like we see her go from scolding Eren and basically reminding him that this operation is going to get people killed, to once he does actually pick up the boulder, like have the resolve and the strength to fight and ends up taking down one of the Titans in his way. And then after, watch her break down over the fact that she just lost quite a few comrades, but at the same time, humanity just had its first victory against the Titans. Also, one of my favorite character introducing scenes is in Attack on Titan, the first season, and that is Sasha's introduction. Iconic. I love her. It shows a lot about her character in a very little amount of time, that she's maybe not the most socially aware, but earnest and actually is trying. And then later we get to see her like save somebody off of the wall like really quickly and show her reaction time whenever the Colossal Titan comes, which also like, ow. Every time I see that scene, I like rub my leg. Also, in the first episode, watching Hannes be petrified by the Smiling Titan and then resorting to just saving Eren and Mikasa rather than fighting it and saving Carla as well is just... Also, what development we did see in characters that aren't in the Golden Trio was pretty good too. Like, for example, my favorite character progression is probably Jean's. We see him at the very beginning be really arrogant and say that he's really only joining because he wants to be in the military police and, you know, blah, blah, blah. He has kind of the same arrogance that Eren does about him, but then after Trost, we see him become kind of this reluctant leader, and I think that that is really cool. And although he definitely got there with some external help, he got there halfway on his own. Too soon? Still? Yeah, okay. But like once we get more familiar with the world and more familiar with these characters, we get more and more time with them. Like, I already talked about Historia and how much I loved her character and briefly talked about Ymir, but one of my favorites is that we get almost an entire episode dedicated to Sasha fighting off a Titan without ODM gear in order to save a little girl. And also, while it's happening, she eventually resorts back to her original dialect of a southern accent, and it's just beautiful. It's amazing. I love it. Basically, Attack on Titan subverts fan service by actually taking its female characters seriously and using them to tell a more compelling and complex story from different perspectives. This shouldn't be a reason for praise anymore, but at the same time, a lot of media that we see still feels... like its characters, especially female characters, are half-baked, so I'm still going to talk about how amazing the women in Attack on Titan are. Honestly, I just wanted an excuse to talk about the female characters in Attack on Titan, man. I love them so much. Have you seen them? God. To summarize, Attack on Titan is a show I would recommend to anyone, especially if you are tired with fan service and anime. I also really love the way that this show proves that you can tell a mature story without having sexual elements really at all. And it's just amazing. It's awesome. I promise. Well, anyway, if you're watching, hopefully you've already seen it. Right? Right? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. This is basically a not really researched opinion piece ramble thing that I wrote in a couple of hours. I just really wanted to talk about Attack on Titan and how much I love it, and talk about a certain aspect that I didn't see a lot of people talking about as much as they probably should, and I've already annoyed with my friends with it. But I can no longer speak. My speaking time is done. It is time to end the video. Apparently. I also just really wanted to talk about how much I love it because I'm already kind of annoying my friends with it. So yeah, maybe send this to your friends if you want them to watch it. But make sure that they stop once I give the spoiler warning, please. I swear to God, please. Anyway, I'd love to hear your guys' opinions down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree, disagree, anything in between. Also, while you're down there, I would love it if you give me a like and maybe subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Like I said, this was kind of just me wanting to talk about it and wanting to get this out there. I love watching video essays, so I wanted to try and write one myself. So we'll see how this goes. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you later. Also, I'm wearing Attack on Titan socks. You can't see them, but they're there. I'm not flexible. I will not show you. Just trust me. Anyway.